We thought the smell in the back room was one of Kevin's weird sex toys, until we looked up and saw it crawling on the ceiling, and asked if I'd crapped myself. But the smell wasn't coming from me, looking for advice or whatever. So, to make a long story short, I work for a quick check in Scotch Plains, NJ. Started working there as a summer job, but now, ever since the old art degree didn't pan out, it's been that and Uber for the past 3 years. My parents are sick of me, but what can you do? I'm in the store around 5 o'clock in the morning. No one's been in there for I'd say 30 minutes, and that was just Dale for his morning coffee. My boss walks in, and immediately he starts sniffing around. Jay, did you crap yourself? What, Mike? No, the freaking are you talking about? I smell something rancid. Did someone leave out a thing of milk? No? I inhaled deeply as well, and sure enough, there was something faint and sickening from inside the store. It's probably a dead rat. Better not be. I paid way too much for those ladybug pest people to not get rid of the freaking nest. He went behind the counter and grabbed a broom. I'm gonna look around. Knock yourself out. My boss started circling around the quick check, checking under displays and checking out the employee break room. He went into the back storage and let a soft, the freaking, out. He came out and walked out towards me. Whose weird stuffed animal is that in there? He asked. Stuffed animal, I repeated. Might be Kevin's. He's a little special. Yeah, but it smells like rot, man. Like he's been jerking off into it when he's on his break. But that wasn't the weirdest thing in that storage room. I shuddered. Freaking Kevin. You need to get rid of that thing. Freaking no, I don't want to touch Kevin's weird sex toy. I haven't reported you for those zins that have gone missing. You owe me. I groaned as I grabbed a trash bag from under the counter and trudged to the back of the store. When I entered, though, it wasn't there. Where did you see it, Mike? It's on the table. No, it's not. What, do I have 2 Kevins? He walked towards me. It's literally right, dot. He pointed at the table and he fell into a hushed silence. It was there. He turned to me. Okay, Jay, freaking off. I don't know what sick prank you're pulling, but whatever plush toy you filled with crap or whatever the freaking are you saying, Mike? I didn't. We were both cut off by a loud gurgle. We looked up, above our heads, and attached to the ceiling was the creature. It had 2 bulbous and wrinkly sacs on each side of its head, a beak, and had nothing I could note as eyes. Its torso, if you could call it that, was excreting some kind of viscous slime onto the ceiling, allowing it to cling, assisted by 5 spider leg-like tentacles. Mike, the freaking is that? We looked at each other incredulously, and bolted out of the storage room, closing the door on the way out, and pushing against it with our backs. We breathed heavily, the smell becoming even stronger. Jay, I swear to God, if this is some kind of prank, you're not only going to be fired, but my foot is going to be shoved so far up your ass. Mike, I promise you, I have 0 clue what that freaking thing is. We stared at each other for a moment, as Mike slowly backed away from the door, and I cracked the door slightly to look at what we were dealing with. Is it still there? Yup, still chilling on the ceiling. It started to make soft, cooing noises as it descended slowly. It was aware of my presence, I think, as it guided 2 tentacles onto the lunch table to steady itself before coming down. When it did, the sacs on its head inflated, allowing it to pull together all 5 tentacles into one firm mass as it wriggled and gyrated on the table, leaving a firm layer of mucus. It then guided itself off the table and went into the back of the storage area. I cracked the door further and started to step inside to approach the table. It wrote something. What the freaking you mean it wrote something? Mike hissed. I approached further and saw a drawing of an oval with 2 triangles on the bottom, 2 dots, and a bird-like shape in the center. It was then I noticed the garbage strewn across the room. It drew the Pringles guy. We found a weird creature, and now our lives were at stake. It drew the Pringles guy? It drew the Pringles guy. The freaking you mean it drew the Pringles guy, Mike said as he stormed irritatingly into the back room. He then gazed thoughtfully at the table. It drew the Pringles guy. It drew the Pringles guy. The creature happily cooed. Well, what do we do, Mike? We give the thing what it wants. Mike marched out into the store, grabbed a can of Pringles, and rolled it carefully towards the creature. The creature burbled and grabbed the can with 1 tentacle. It stood the can upright, then reinflating the sacs to float, and using 2 tentacles to pry the lid in half, used the remaining 3 tentacles to scoop the chips into its beak, which separated into 4 pieces, allowing for a cavernous mouth to form. When it was done, the creature clicked its beak with seeming happiness and rolled the can back over to us. "Son of a jerk," I said softly. "Quick, quick, get him another," Mike said eagerly. I did, and again the creature repeated the same process. We grabbed salt and vinegar, sour cream and onion, barbecue. The thing sucked literally every crumb out. After the 7th can, it cooed as it approached Mike and I, reaching out a tentacle. I think it wants to be friends with us," I said, mesmerized. "Yeah, grab its hand, Jay." "I ain't grabbing that tentacle, you grab it." "Freaking no, man, I'm your boss, you want OT or what?" I groaned and reached my hand out for the creature to touch. When it did, it was as though time itself slowed down. I could feel every muscle of the creature's body, every muscle in my own body. It felt as though we shared a mind. I saw a lush yellow planet, and I saw grand, majestic creatures, and then I saw the empty vacuum of space and the deep, deep cold, for what could have been millennia, until there was an unfreezing, and he was here. I started to cry. "Jesus, are you okay, man?" I disconnected from the alien. "No, I mean, yeah. He's beautiful, Mike. He's just like us." Mike stared at me incredulously. "What, did he make you gay?" "No, it's not that. It's just, hello, is anyone here?" A shrill voice echoed through the store. "Oh crap, we're on the clock." I pointed to the alien. "You stay here, little guy, okay?" The alien clicked his beak. Then Mike and I left the storage room. When I came out, there was a woman at the counter, tapping her foot impatiently. In one hand was a $10 bill. In the other was a gallon of milk. Mike went into his office, and I went behind the counter. "Hi, I'm so sorry about that." I went to grab the money out of her hand when I noticed the viscous goo that coated it from when I touched the alien. The woman looked disgusted. "I get y'all can do that now, but at work?" No, nothing like that, trust me." "Haha." I chuckled as I wiped the goo on the side of my jeans, making the scene look slightly more suspect. "Okay, just give me my change," she said as she looked away. She sniffed in and then looked back at me and then towards my torso and grimaced. "Do you even know what condoms are?" "I don't know, do you know how to keep your mouth shut?" I said, counting the change. She scoffed. "How rude. You people need to treat others with respect," she said, grabbing her change in her fist and leaving the store. I sighed deeply before going back to the storage room with a can of Pringles. I watched the little guy suck them down as he climbed around the storage room. I tried to give him other snacks, Lay's chips, fruit snacks, heck, even a sandwich, but he really only liked the Pringles. "Hey Jay," Mike said, entering the room and closing the door. "So, I get that thing is an alien, but what do we do with it?" He squatted down to look at him. "This feels like an FBI kind of situation." "Yeah, but he's intelligent and he's good. I don't think the government will treat him well. He might get tortured." "Yeah, but Jay, it's a freaking alien." He looked to me. "It could have any number of diseases, or it could tell its homeworld that we're a bid planet. Or no, Penjamin would never." "Penjamin? Yes. Like a vape? 'Cause he sucks on the Pringles and he can draw." Mike stared at me. "Listen, Penjamin could be evil, dude. We don't know." I looked at the little guy, his little face sacks rumbling, when I heard the front door slam. "Excuse me?" "Oh, god darn it," I said, leaving the back to go to the front. There again was the lady, holding the opened container of milk. "This milk is expired. Expired. How freaking dare you? Are you trying to poison me and my children?" she screamed. "You won't believe how fast this situation turned deadly." "No, ma'am, nothing of the sort." "What day is it today?" What day is it? The 17th? "Yes, and what does it say on this milk?" She pushed the milk towards my face, her other manicured hand tapping her nail against the date. "May the 16th. "Oh, so we can read. I need to speak to a manager, or else I'll be speaking to corporate. And the freaking is that?" She pointed down at the ground. I turned to see Penjamin. "Oh, that? Funny story. That thing is disgusting," she screeched. Penjamin's head sacs vibrated uncomfortably. "You people have vermin in this store?" "No, so actually, I'm calling the cops right now. You disgusting freaking, I'm going to get this place shut the freaking D." Penjamin let loose a high-pitched screech and sprinted over to the woman. It latched itself onto her, climbing up her leg, then to her torso. "Get it the freaking off. Get it." She closed her mouth once its tentacles got to her face. The alien then took its 2 tentacles onto the woman's lips and forcefully separated them, her jaw becoming limp. I watched on in horror as the other 3 tentacles reached deep into the woman's throat, making it bulge and writhe as her organs were pulled out of her torso. First her lungs, then her heart, then some intestine, sucked up like it was spaghetti into the bottomless mouth the beak revealed. The woman spasmed, her body being rooted around for any morsel of nutrition, before going limp and falling to the ground. The alien, its beak covered in blood and viscera, released her, her body more or less just a pile of misplaced bones and hollow skin. I fell back as Benjamin grabbed another can of Pringles and went into the back storage area. "Hey, I heard a commotion," Mike said. "Everything all—" "What the fricking?" he cried, looking at the woman's body. We stared at each other. "Hey, listen, Mike. I didn't know that crap was gonna happen. I swear to, get the mop." "What?" "Look, Jay, I'm not going back to prison. You see this?" He lifted up his pant leg to show an ankle monitor. "This is the only reason I'm able to see my kids. Get the freaking mop." "Mike, please, dude, a woman died." "And you think the cops are gonna believe a freaking alien did it?" he screamed. He was right. So I got the mop. We dumped what remained of the woman in the Watchung Reservation. There was a nearby creek that was pretty active, so she kinda just floated away. The whole situation kinda has me torn up inside. No pun intended. Anyway, coming over here to ask if anyone has any experiences with this kind of thing, and maybe I could get some help from someone who believes all of this. I don't know. Good to get it out, though. Up next, the host insisted the upstairs was just for storage, but at 3:12 a.m. I heard it moving. That alone should have tipped me off. I needed a last-minute escape to Northern California, 3 days to reset, get some remote work done, and breathe somewhere quiet. Most places were booked or insanely expensive. Then this one showed up, half the price of anything else, and it said entire home, private, and no shared spaces. The photos were pretty standard. It was a small 2-story house tucked in the woods with a clean kitchen, nothing fancy, but it looked comfortable. The host's name was Daniel, but his profile was brand new. There were no reviews. That was another red flag, but I shrugged it off. I needed a place, so I booked. But that wasn't even the strangest part of the stay. Getting there was a slog, and it was already dark when I finally pulled up. The house matched the photos exactly. It stands all by itself, with tall trees all around and just a lonely porch light over the door. I punched in the code Daniel said me and stepped inside. It was dead quiet. It wasn't the cozy kind of quiet you'd expect in a cabin. It was more like the air was pressed down and heavy. I tried to shake it off, but the silence was hiding something much more sinister. The place smelled a little stale, like it hadn't been aired out in a while, but it was spotless. The house was perfect, but the atmosphere felt heavy and wrong. There was no clutter and no dust. I tossed my bag on the couch and wandered around. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, everything matched the listing. Then I spotted the stairs leading up to the second floor. There was a tiny sign at the bottom that said, "Upstairs is locked, not included." That wasn't in the listing. I checked my phone. Entire home. There was no mention of locked rooms. So I messaged Daniel. "Hey, quick question. The listing says entire home, but there's a sign saying the upstairs is locked?" He shot back right away. "Yeah, just storage. Nothing up there. You have full access to everything you need downstairs." The instant reply creeped me out a little. It was like he knew I'd ask. I stared at the stairs for a while, feeling weird about it, but eventually I let it go. The first night was fine. I ordered some takeout, lounged on the couch, and watched Netflix. I tried to relax. Around midnight, I went to bed. At some point, I woke up. I wasn't sure why, but then I heard a sound, a faint step from above me. I froze, listening. I heard nothing else. I told myself it was old house noises like piping or temperature changes, and tried to sleep again. Then another thud came. It was slower and definite, like someone was shifting weight upstairs. My chest got tight. I sat up, staying super still. "Hello?" I called. Silence. I checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. Classic. I almost laughed at myself because this was dumb. I was trapped in a house with something hiding upstairs. Morning came, and honestly, everything felt normal again. Sunlight makes things less creepy. I made coffee, settled by the window, and tried to focus on work. The morning sun couldn't hide the dread I felt. Around lunch, I checked the Wi-Fi settings out of habit. That's when I saw it. 2 devices were connected, my laptop and something labeled device_upstairs. I stared at the list. Maybe it was a smart thermostat or something, but the name was too specific. I took a screenshot and sent it to Daniel. The host was lying, and my safety was now at risk. Hey, is there another device connected to the Wi-Fi? Something called device_upstairs? This time, he didn't write back right away. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, he said, probably just an old device, nothing to worry about. That was it. It wasn't even a real answer. I messaged again. Okay, but I heard footsteps last night. Are you sure no one's up there? He read it, but then nothing. That night I locked my bedroom door. I don't even know why. It wouldn't stop anyone already inside, but it just made me feel less exposed. I kept the lights on late. Eventually around 1 a.m., I climbed into bed. I woke up again at 3:12 a.m. This time, the noises weren't subtle. It was pacing, slow, back and forth, right over my head. My heart was pounding. Nope, I whispered. Nope, not doing this. I grabbed my phone, about to message Daniel again. Before I could hit send, the footsteps stopped. There was dead silence. Then I heard a dragging sound. It was furniture scraping on the floor right above me, something heavy. I couldn't breathe. Hello? I said, louder this time. Nothing. I got up. I couldn't seem to stop myself. Panic, curiosity, or adrenaline, who knows? I went out to the hallway. The stairs waited, black and still. Every instinct in me wanted to run, but I climbed them anyway. The sign was still there. Upstairs is locked. But the door at the top was ajar. Light spilled through the gap. I don't remember deciding to go up. I just did. One step at a time, the air was getting colder. My hand shook as I pushed the door open. The room wasn't for storage. Someone was living up there. There was a mattress, empty food containers, water bottles, and clothes thrown around. And then I saw the photos. Dozens of them were spread across the floor. I picked one up. It was me, sleeping in the bed downstairs. My hands were shaking. There were more photos, all of me from different angles and different nights. Some were taken from the hallway, and some from inside my room. In one photo, I saw a reflection in a window. Someone was standing behind me, watching. I dropped the photos. That's when I heard a voice, just behind me, quiet. You weren't supposed to come up here. I turned. I saw him. I don't remember running out of that house. I was just barefoot, tearing through the woods until I hit the main road. I called the police. When we went back, the house was spotless. There was nothing upstairs. No mattress, no photos. It was like nobody had ever been there. They told me I'd probably imagined everything due to stress and a lack of sleep. Before I left, I checked the Wi-Fi again. It was still connected. Device_upstairs. I messaged Daniel, who was in that house. You weren't supposed to go upstairs. I reported the listing. It's gone now, completely wiped. But here's the part that really gets me. Last night at home, I checked my phone. There was a new device on my Wi-Fi that I'd never added. The name? Device_downstairs. Up next. The porcelain bridge they installed 40 years ago wasn't for chewing. It was a seal, and my dentist just broke it. The day I was weaned, there was only silence. When my mother pulled me away from her breast, she saw that the milk dripping down my chin wasn't white. It was a pale pink, veined with a thread of red liquid, dense and dark. That day, the village decided I had tasted enough of her. After that abrupt weaning, formula arrived as a cold but insufficient consolation. As I grew, my gums didn't just throb. They burned with a dull fire that climbed up to my temples. I remember sinking my teeth into everything I could find. The edges of wooden tables, hardened rubber toys, even the smooth river stones my mother let me suck on to cool my mouth. I wasn't the only one. In the village school, the background noise during lessons wasn't the sound of pencils against paper, but the grinding of 30 children's teeth. It was a chorus of clenched jaws. We looked at one another with swollen cheeks and eyes bright with fever, recognizing in our neighbor that same nervous twitch in the jaw. But that wasn't the worst part. My grandfather, with his mouth of bare, dark gums, watched us with a mixture of pity and resignation. It's the earth claiming its own, he would say, laboriously chewing his corn porridge. When I turned 10, the itching became unbearable. I felt like my front teeth weren't attached to the gum, but were floating atop a soft mass that wanted to emerge. It was then that my mother took me by the hand to Dr. Alarcon's office. They didn't take x-rays or ask many questions. They just pried my mouth open with fingers that smelled of tobacco and metal. "It's time," he said, looking not at my teeth, but at something further back, something in my palate that was beginning to bulge downward. The extraction was quick and strangely silent. There was no dry crunch one expects from a healthy tooth leaving its socket. It was more like pulling roots from swampy soil. Dr. Alarcon pulled out the 4 front teeth, and for a second, before the blood flooded my mouth, I saw what lay beneath. There were no clean holes, but a dark, slit-like cavity that seemed to want to breathe. "Put the bridge on immediately," he ordered my mother. "Don't let the bone feel the air. If the bone feels the air, it gets used to coming out." I didn't understand what Dr. Alarcon meant, nor why Mama had that look of desperate urgency on her face. In our village, last names weren't names, they were labels for the same substance. No one was surprised that the mayor's son had the same drooping eyes and receding chin as Mr. Juan, the coffee picker, or that my mother called cousin men who, by biological logic, should have been mere acquaintances. We accepted that some children were born with their backs split open in a sore of raw flesh that doctors called a draft, and that others, like me, had that urgency in our palates. The village had a secret, and I was part of it. Dr. Alarcon was no stranger. He was a guardian. His hands of tobacco and metal had pruned the gums of my aunts and my grandparents, keeping at bay that shape that genetics wanted to give us. "Don't stray from your own," my aunt told me, as she adjusted my new bridge. "Outside, they don't understand our thirst. Outside, people are thin. They don't have our consistency." My family called this stage the White Period, a time of purification where we were supposed to pay for the weight of our heritage with silence. Our family secret was about to demand a terrifying price. I remember the afternoon my mother sat me in the courtyard and called the neighbor. She led her son by the hand, a boy of barely 11 with a vacant stare. "It's for the sake of the root," my mother whispered. "You have the same bone consistency. Dr. Alarcon says your palates fit together like 2 halves of the same fruit." I felt a shiver deep within my jaw. They weren't looking for us to love each other. They were looking for us to seal each other. I began to observe with different eyes. I saw how the village didn't celebrate unions, but crossings. What the village called tradition tasted to me like spoiled meat. The final straw was overhearing Dr. Alarcon one night speaking with my father. "If we don't link her soon with the little one, her body will start to look outside," Alarcon said. "The outside air will wake it up. If she leaves, what we have sealed will rot. We must secure the bridge before desire moves her." That night I understood that I wasn't a daughter. I was a reservoir. The next morning, I packed my few belongings. I stepped over the threshold without looking back. For 40 years, I became an expert of the surface in the city. I managed to establish a solid life, but my love life was the sacrifice necessary to maintain my peace. I preferred loneliness to the risk of seeing disgust in a stranger's eyes, until, a few weeks ago, the silence broke. It began as a dull throb, a needle of fire in my upper gum. Powerless, I went to the dentist provided by my insurance. "That bridge is old, ma'am," he said, manipulating my mouth with cold forceps. "The root of the tooth next to it is rotting. We have to pull the remains and clean the area." There was no Alarcon-style ceremony. When the first tooth broke, the sound was wet, like rotting wood splintering. He shoved his gloved fingers into my mouth and yanked my upper lip upward with blind ruthlessness. I felt the tissue was about to tear, my lip peeling away like the skin of overripe fruit. The man began to dig into my hard palate. The final crack was a deep, hollow sound that echoed at the base of my skull. He had punctured the palate. A waterfall of hot, rancid blood flooded my throat. "Swallow that," he ordered. He forced me to swallow my own essence. That night, the inflammation deformed half my face. When I removed the gauze, I saw the hole in my palate. It wasn't a surgical wound. It was a mouth within my mouth. The infection was a mass of porous, living tissue. I remembered Alarcon's words. "If the bone feels the air, it gets used to coming out." On the morning of the 5th day, my body surrendered. In the emergency room, the doctors' faces tightened behind their masks. They took samples of that thick pus, veined with yellow granules, an anaerobic bacteria that was devouring my maxilla. But the true horror was the genetic mapping. "There is something that doesn't add up in your markers, ma'am," the hematologist said. "We found long runs of homozygosity across almost all your chromosomes." My genetic map wasn't a crossroads. It was a closed circle. an infinite loop of the same blood crashing against itself. But the real nightmare was just beginning to stir. Now, as the antibiotic drip marks the rhythm of my hours, I cannot stop the questions. What was it that could come out if the bone felt the air? Is there something else living in the empty space of my skull? I look at the medical report and one final doubt freezes my blood. If my genetic map is a perfect circle, how many more times has this story repeated itself in the shadows of the village? The city butcher didn't kill me. He only took off my mask. And now that the air has entered, I am terrified to think that what is waking up in my palate is afraid of going home. Up next, the secret files described 50 years of disappearances, and every single report mentioned the boots. Mostly repair work, cabins, fire towers, and old ranger stations. The kind of jobs nobody else wanted because they were too far from anywhere and paid next to nothing. That October, I got a call from a Park Service office asking if I could spend 2 weeks repairing a ranger station deep in the mountains. They said the place had been abandoned since the late 70s. Nobody told me why. The station was about 40 miles from the nearest paved road. No power, no phone line, just a dirt track through pine forest and canyon country. The building was worse than they described. Half the roof had collapsed, and the walls were black with mold. Rat nests were in everything. The place felt wrong from the moment I stepped inside. Not haunted, I do not believe in that, just heavy, like the air had not moved in a very long time. On the third day, I was pulling rotten shelves out of the station office. Behind the shelves, I found a door. It was narrow and set into the wall like it was built with the station and then covered up later. But that was only the beginning of the mystery. The hinges were rusted shut, so I had to use a crowbar. Behind the door was a small room no bigger than a pantry. No windows, just concrete walls, which was strange because the rest of the station was timber frame. Someone had built this room differently on purpose. But that wasn't even the strangest thing I found there. There was a metal desk, a broken chair, and on the floor, a wooden box. The box had no label and no lock. It was heavy. Inside were dozens of file folders, some typed on official Park Service letterheads, some handwritten on notebook paper, and some just scraps folded and tucked in. The oldest file was dated 1931. The newest was from 1982. Over 50 years of reports, all hidden in the same room and passed down from one head ranger to the next. Every single folder had the same stamp across the front in red ink and block letters, "Do not file." I did not read them all that night. I read 5 or 6 sitting on the floor with a work lamp plugged into my generator. 5 or 6 was enough. They were incident reports that somebody had decided should not exist. Disappearances, hikers, campers, hunters, and families. People who walked into the backcountry and did not come back, or who came back wrong. They were found miles from where they should have been, confused, injured, and unable to explain what happened. And the details kept repeating. Camps found intact, gear untouched, and the boots, always the boots, left behind in the tent or beside the bedroll, placed neatly, like the person had taken them off, set them down, and walked into the dark barefoot. Not once, not twice. This occurred across decades and across different parks. Different rangers wrote the reports years apart, none of them knowing the others had seen the same thing. But someone knew. Someone collected these files, hid them behind a wall, and stamped every one of them with the same words. Those files held a secret that was never meant to escape. I should have put the box back. I should have sealed the room and driven home. Instead, I loaded the box into my truck. Something happened on my last morning at that station. I woke up early, maybe 5:30. I stepped outside and looked down at the ground in front of the door. I had been tracking my own boot prints in and out for days, so I knew what my prints looked like. These were not mine. They were bare feet. Bare footprints started about 10 feet from the front door, not coming toward the station, but leading away toward the tree line at the edge of the clearing. They crossed the clearing in a straight line and disappeared into the trees. There were no prints coming back. I was 40 miles from the nearest road and had not seen another person in 4 days. Whatever made those prints was still out there in the woods. I finished the job, but I did not sleep well. When I drove out, the box was in the back of my truck. I never handed it over. I never told anyone what I found until now. I have carried this box for almost 30 years. I have gone back to it dozens of times, read more of the files, and compared them. I found patterns that span decades and stretch across the entire country. The booths, the distances that do not make sense, the caves that nobody wants to talk about, and the people who tried to report what they saw and were quietly moved aside. People are still going missing every year in the same way, in the same kinds of places. I have started recording myself reading through these files, all of them, in order. I need there to be a record that cannot be stamped and buried. You can find the recordings. I do not know if anyone will listen, but they are there. I will change the names, the locations, and the dates, but the stories themselves stay. Because somebody should know. These are the buried archives. Up next, my 20-year detective career ended the day the bomb squad found a child's finger inside a ticking package. Little Kaylee Everson, dressed to the nines for her second-grade school photos. The image portrayed her perfectly, exactly how she was as a person. She wore a snaggletooth smile, and her dirty blonde hair had been curled like a pageant star, with a light lavender sundress and a bright red bow atop her head. It is an image that, no matter how badly I want to, I will never forget. For 20 years, I was on the force. I started as a rookie and climbed the ranks to lead detective through blood, sweat, and a desire to be the best. But I am a man who made a mistake that has grown to haunt me as the weeks drag on. I should have never gone searching. I should have never let my pride stand in the way of my good sense. My partner, Detective John Ripley, tossed the picture down onto my desk before running a hand over his bald head. "We got a sad one today, champ," he sighed. He had no idea that I was already in too deep. I responded with a quick flick of my fading cigarette. "When are they not, Ripley?" There was something different about this one, though. CCTV footage picked the little girl up right outside the corner store off Carter Street. She was wearing her pajamas and looked confused as to where she was. The video was time-stamped at 3:18 in the morning. But that wasn't the worst part. No sign of who dropped her off, no sign of a parent, nothing. Just a little girl stumbling clumsily into the camera's frame. At approximately 3:25, Kaylee noticeably snapped her head around, as though someone had been calling for her. Ever so slowly, she turned and walked timidly toward the direction of the noise. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. This was the last anyone had ever seen of her. We rode together straight to that store off Carter Street. When we arrived, the place was buzzing with people, but one flash of the badge cleared the parking lot. We tried to conduct our research, but the store owner kept pestering us with questions. Ripley and I finally stepped out for a smoke break just to be left alone. While we stood there, something caught my eye in the store's downspout. I stomped my cigarette and walked over to the object stuffed meticulously in the tube. I knelt down as I pulled a tiny red bow free. The true gut punch, however, was the note fastened to the bow with a clothing pin. "Do not look for me." It was evident that this was not Kaylee's handwriting. Ripley phoned for backup while I analyzed the bow, completely entranced. Soon, the entire area was swarming with police. We looked for hours, but daylight drained quickly. I made the decision to go home and get some rest so I could stay sharp. The drive home tormented me. I couldn't get her face out of my head. I autopiloted my way home and collapsed into a deep, dreamless sleep. I awoke at 9 a.m. to the sound of knocking on my front door, but when I checked the peephole, no one was there. I found a package left on my welcome mat. The packaging was completely blank, a scuff-free cardboard box that weighed less than a pound. I took the box with me to the office. On the drive there, curiosity ate at me. I realized I must have been followed. I became paranoid about what was hidden inside, and as if listening to my thoughts, the box began to faintly tick. I pulled my car into a desolate parking garage and phoned the bomb squad. They instructed me to vacate the premises. This one moment would change everything. 10 minutes later, the squad showed up. A man in an armored suit approached the package and carefully cut the tape. He jumped back with a yelp. "It's a finger," he cried. "Small one, too. Looks like it came with some kind of timer." My lungs burned and my face grew red. I knew deep down that Kaylee was gone. The next couple of hours were a blur. The package was brought back to the station for analysis, while I remained in my office. Kaylee was still missing, and now we had a severed finger. The ticking of the clock on my wall drove me mad until I removed the batteries. I decided to watch the CCTV video one last time. I rewound the tape 4 separate times, scanning the grainy footage. On the 5th rewatch, I saw him. Hidden behind a tree at the forest line, He beckoned her over with a wave of his hand. What haunted me the most was that the man was me. Same wrinkles, same graying hair, same face. I rewound the footage 6 times. It was unmistakable. Just as I rewound for the 7th time, Ripley came flying into the office. "Positive match for Kaylee on that finger," he announced. "We're looking for a body at this point." Kaylee's life was likely over, and my own was falling apart. My mind raced. If I told Ripley what I had seen, he would believe I was insane. If I didn't say anything and they found it later, there would be no coming back. I chose to stay silent. I decided to take the tape home with me where it would be more secure. For the next week, I called out sick. Day in and day out, I researched Kaylee's family online. While looking through the pages of her relatives, a message popped up on my screen. "Do not look for me." I clicked the chat and an image appeared. The image revealed Kaylee huddled in the corner of a dark concrete room. Her pajamas were torn, and she was crying, holding a bloody stump where her finger had been. And there, towering over her with a demonic smile, was me again. A new message popped up. "Do not look for us." That was the moment reality began to unravel. I saw a post on the account that read, "Rest in peace, Kaylee," uploaded 2 hours before news broke of the finger being found. I messaged the user, "Who is this?" I waited for a reply. 2 hours went by in what felt like moments. Then, urgent knocking at my front door. It was Ripley. He was looking for the VHS tape, and noticed I had taken the batteries out of my clock. He told me they found fingerprints and asked me to come down to the office. I knew what that meant. I told him I would get ready, but I went out the back door instead. I stuck to the woods for discretion. I didn't know where I was going until the lights of a corner store came into view. As I approached, I saw her, standing alone and looking confused. I finally found her. I called her name, she turned to meet my eyes, and I gestured her over with a wave. Kaylee is safe now. I've decided to keep her until I am able to figure out who her abductor was. But until then, I promise you, Kaylee is safe. She will return as happy as she has ever been. But for now, please do not look for me.